Now, for football lovers, and in particular for lovers of Liverpool Football Club, last week provided a big shock when the coach, Jurgen Klopp, announced that after 8.5 years, he was going to leave Liverpool at the end of this season. He has been hugely successful at turning around a club that when he arrived was struggling and had struggled for a long time. But Klopp has transformed it. He's won everything: Champions League, the Premier League, which they hadn't won for over 30 years. And more than that, he has shown that he has an affinity with the people of Liverpool, with the supporters of Liverpool Football Club. His relationship with those fans is warm, genuine, and quite rare. So when he announced he was leaving, there was a big shock. The shock continues to reverberate. And to discuss Klopp, what might happen next, and Xabi Alonso, a former Liverpool player and now doing really good stuff in Germany, where his club, Bayer Leverkusen, are top of the league, 2 points in front of Bayern Munich, who've won the league for the last 11 seasons. He may well be the next Liverpool coach, but we'll come to that. It's a pleasure now to welcome to the stand an old friend, Didi Hamann. Didi was a great player and is forever in the hearts of Liverpool fans because he came on at half-time when they were losing to AC Milan in the Champions League final and turned the game round, or helped to turn the game round. And then when it went to a penalty shootout, he stepped up and took the first penalty. And that's not the first time he did that. At Wembley in a cup final, he did exactly the same thing. So he has what we call bottle. Didi, good morning to you.
Morning, Amo.
There's no doubt you've got bottle, Didi. And you had I didn't realise until this...
I thought you were going to carry on.
I didn't realise until I read this morning your Wikipedia page that you actually had a broken foot or an injured foot when you took that penalty against Milan.
Yeah, I had a stress fracture in my metatarsal, which I obviously didn't know at the time. It happened a few minutes, 4 or 5 minutes before the end of extra time. And obviously we used all our subs. Adrenaline was pumping, and obviously coming off wasn't an option. We had Jamie Carragher going down with cramps 3 or 4 times. And obviously this is what won us the game. We had such a strong bond and such a togetherness, which in the end won us a game, which probably at halftime nobody expected us to.
No, absolutely. You look dead and buried. Jurgen Klopp, Didi, he managed Dortmund successfully. He managed Mainz also. Were you surprised, as everyone else appears to have been, that he decided to make the announcement he made last week? And were you surprised, or indeed did you feel the warmth that Liverpool fans expressed when they learned this news?
Well, a bit of both. I think the day was going to come where he's going to step down or leave the club. And if you look at the modern game, it's very rarely you've got a manager staying longer than 3 or 4 seasons. And
yes.
If you look at the big clubs, it's not the norm anymore. Obviously we had Wenger, we had Ferguson there for decades at their clubs. But in the modern game, with the press commitments, there's so many things to do for a manager. It's a very testing and stressful job. And he's done it for 8.5 years. He couldn't have done it any better. He just said when he joined the club was struggling. If you look at the team, or the first team, when he became a Liverpool coach or manager, how he's transformed the club in comparison to other clubs with very limited financial sources, you have to say.
Yes.
And the day was always going to come. It was a bit of a shock at first, but as you've seen yesterday, I think this is what the city is all about. I think every home game, every away game will be a party now. I think they give him the send-off he deserves, and I think emotionally it probably gives him a bit more energy. I always fancied them to win the league, or the way things have been going now in the last week or so. I'm pretty convinced now that he's going to win the league this season. And last time they won it, there were no fans allowed because it was COVID. And what a party would be.
Yes.
If he could lift the trophy, the Premier League trophy again, with the fans this time.
Now, people have referred to Alex Ferguson doing something similar when he announced he was going to leave Manchester United at the end of a season, and I think it was in the 90s. And they dived down the table, no longer contended, and the whole thing was a bit of a disaster. He then decided, changed his mind again, and said he was going to stay on. Is there any danger, do you think, that that could happen to Liverpool? I don't think so myself. I've written a piece today for the Star saying that I think the relationship is so good, and optimism and spirit. And Klopp is a very different animal from Ferguson, much warmer, much more connected with his players. He doesn't rule by fear. I don't think the same thing will happen, but there is a risk, is there?
Oh, 100%, Eamon. And, maybe in this case is a bigger risk because of the warmth Klopp had with the faithful, with the fans, with the whole city, because I think the city fell in love with him. He fell in love with the city. And as you've seen at Manchester United or at Arsenal, they had quite a big turnover of managers. I think Ferguson left now 10 or 12 years ago. I think they probably had about 9 or 10 managers since he's left. And I think there's always a danger. And I think, if Liverpool comes calling, if you can manage Liverpool, I think it's very hard or impossible to turn down. But if you follow a manager as successful as Klopp was and as loved as he was, I think there's always a little bit of a danger. The footsteps you're going to fill are a bit too big. And they had a hugely successful time under him. So whoever goes in next, because they've got a team now that can compete, they've got a team this year which can win the league. I think they will win the league. So obviously expectations next year won't be any lower. When Klopp came in, I think everybody said, well, if we get in the Champions League and win a trophy here or there, we are happy. But as you said before, he transformed the club. Expectations are always something that can come back to haunt you. And whoever goes in next, whether it's Alonso or somebody else, I think there's always a danger that, expectations, what they're really able to do, maybe bringing new players in and get to know the players. I think there's always a danger that things don't go that smoothly in the first few months.
Now, you went to Liverpool, Didi, a place you didn't know. And the great thing about Klopp is that he gets Liverpool, not just the football club, the city and where it stands in England. It's a bit alienated from the establishment. He gets them and they get him. Did you feel that when you were playing for Liverpool? It was not like anywhere else.
Yeah, it is a special club. There's a special bond between the fans and the players and the management. And he had probably a similar background in Dortmund, because Dortmund is a working class city as well, and you've got the people there as well. And you only get loved by the people or by the fans if you win. But then obviously, if you have a connection, if you get them, as we say, that creates a bond that is that stays forever. And I think that's what he did, and also what he managed to do, because people were always laughing about Liverpool when they won the first 4 games or 5 games, and everybody said, this is our year. And from the first day when he said he's the normal one, I think he changed the mentality in the whole city, because he said we've got to go from doubters to believers.
Yeah, and of course, just to explain that reference to the normal one, he was responding to Mourinho, who at the time described himself as the special one.
Yeah.
And
he changed the mentality in the whole city.
Yes.
Because he said, I'm not bothered about the first 5 games. He said, we're not going to win the league in the first 5 games. We might lose it. More important is where we stand 3-4 games before the end of the season. And, I thought he brought people in Liverpool get very excited. They love their football. They're very knowledgeable, but sometimes they got carried away far too early. And I think this is what he also did. I think he changed the mentality not only in the football club, but in the whole city, that it's really important not to be top after 5 games, but after the 38th game of the Premier League. And that's an achievement I'm not sure anybody else would have made or would have done.
Tell me about him insofar as you know him, Didi. He looks like a good guy. There must be a bit of steel there behind that personality and character that he shows to all of us and to the fans. What do you think is his greatest strength as a coach, and what kind of man is he?
Well, I think is one of his greatest strengths, or his greatest strength, is probably the connection with the players.
Yes,
I think he treats they're not players for him; they're human beings.
Yes,
and he treats them like his kids, and hence this is why a lot of the players came out and said, "Well, of course, it's a big loss," because I think the relationship he's got with the players is more than a manager-player relationship.
Yes,
I don't want to say it's a friendship, but it's a lot more than the relationship you've got or some of the players had with other managers. And then the other thing is when you go or when you manage big clubs like Dortmund and Liverpool now, expectations are high, and obviously you've got a lot of commitments, and sometimes people want to see you fail. But I think one of the biggest, also big strengths of him is that he always stays, or most of the time he stays calm and assured. And sometimes when the wind blows the hardest, you've got to stand upright. And I think that's what he always did. And he led the way, because as a manager, you're the leader of that club. You're the most important person in the club. You've got to lead by example. And I think he's done that magnificently in the 8.5 years he's been there.
Yeah, and it's worth noting, Didi, that he broke the transfer record for a centre half when he bought Virgil van Dijk from Southampton. But generally, he's had to deal with small money compared to Manchester United, compared to Chelsea and many other clubs. He hasn't had to flash the cash. He hasn't been able to flash it, has he?
No, he hasn't. And this is also the greatness of the man. He said the reason we didn't win more Premier Leagues is not down to the money. Obviously, it was down to the brilliance of Manchester City, but 2 or 3 times they were very close, and they just got beat by a better team. And if you look at the net spend, I think there's teams like Everton and some others are ahead of them.
Yes.
And that shows that, because the managers come to football clubs, they say, well, I want this player, I want this, I need 2 or 3 transfer windows. He never talked about a transfer window. He said, whatever's there, I'll make the best out of it. And I think also this is one thing which people appreciate in the North, especially in Liverpool, that the manager doesn't come in and say, well, I need 3 transfer windows, I need 300 or 400 million quid, because in a way, anybody can do that. And sometimes transfers work out, sometimes not. But if you look at the players he brought in, there's very few who didn't succeed. And at the same time, I think under his tenure, they sold Coutinho for 100 or 140 or 150 million quid. So they always regained money. And this is why the net spend is nowhere near what other clubs have spent. And it's very hard to put into words what he's really achieved, because money wins titles, or makes it a lot easier to win titles. But he didn't do that. He won them. He grew the team organically, and obviously in the modern day and age, it's harder.
Yes, and the money he got for Coutinho, who wasn't doing his stuff and hadn't for a while done his stuff, he was able to buy Van Dijk and Alisson, the goalkeeper. So he gave away a pretty average player, and he got 2 really outstanding players. In the case of Alisson, I think probably the best goalkeeper in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And Coutinho never reached the heights, because he had a couple of 3 good years at Liverpool, but he never reached the heights afterwards. And I think that was really a masterstroke, because people said, how can you spend 70 or 75 million on a centre-back? But Liverpool were vulnerable at the back. They were a defensively fragile team. And he really transformed the defense. Van Dijk, they went from a fragile team to one of the best, if not the best, defensive teams in the league. And it didn't take long before they got to the Champions League final in Kiev, where they lost to Real Madrid again. They probably could have won as well. In Alisson as well. And in Alisson, they got the best goalkeeper in the Premier League now. Yep. And Van Dijk has been the best centre-back for the last 5 or 6 years. After his injury, he had a bit of a blip, but I think he's near enough back to his best now. And these 2 transfers were really key for Liverpool's success on the clock.
Let me ask you, Didi, about where we go from here. I had a conversation with you a long time ago. We were sitting there waiting for something to happen in RTE. And Xabi Alonso, who of course is a former Liverpool player, and I think a teammate of yours as well, you told me he hadn't finished playing, I don't think, at the time. He certainly hadn't done much in coaching. And you said to me, watch this guy, Eamon, he's going to be a great coach somewhere down the line. And we are down the line now. And he's coaching by Leverkusen. And they are top of the league in Germany. They only drew at home yesterday, but they're 2 points clear of Bayern Munich, who've won the league for the last 11 years. What was it first of all, as a former Liverpool player, someone who understands the club and, is respected, he'd have a great chance of getting the job if he wanted it. But what made you think at the time you told me, which is several years ago, that he was going to be a top-class coach?
Well, first of all, he was a fantastic player, and he came to the club. I think he was only about 20 or 21 years of age when he signed in 2004. He came from Real Sociedad for 10 million quid at the time, and I was just very impressed by him as a player and also as a person, because he was, even at his young age, this is a new world, a new language, a new club. But the maturity he showed and the calmness he showed when he played, he took everything in his stride. And on top of that, he's a very smart guy, a fantastic reader of the game. He was never the quickest, so he had to read the game well to play at the highest level for such a long time. And I just felt that he's got everything a coach or a manager needs. And I'm not too surprised he's yet to lose a game this season. You know, the record for games unbeaten in a season, I think, stood at 25 or 26. If you look at the fantastic teams in Germany, Hamburg in the 80s, Bayern Munich, for decades, they had fantastic teams. They've never been unbeaten more than 25 or 26 games. I think he's at 28 or 29 because he's unbeaten in the league and in the Europa League. They won all 6 games and they're still in the German Cup. So he's done something which nobody has done before. And when he took over the club last season, the club were, I think, third from bottom. And he transformed the club within 12 or 15 months. And this is why I think he's got the world at his feet. Does Liverpool appeal to him? I'm sure it does. I think the only thing that might put him off is the footsteps and the impact Klopp has had in the last 9 years, because it won't be an easy thing to follow for anybody.
That idea of stepping into a giant's shoes is a bit of a deterrent, isn't it?
Yeah, and giant is probably the right word for what Klopp has done, because if you ask any Liverpool fan when Klopp first came in, if you told him 9 years later you've been to 3 Champions League finals, you won 1, you win the Premier League, you won the domestic cups, everybody would have said, with the competition in the Premier League, I'm not sure it's possible in that space of time. But he did, and whoever goes in follows in a chance footsteps, and obviously the chance to fail is a lot higher then.
And we saw when Ferguson stepped down, and David Moyes, who is a very good manager, and he is a manager rather than a coach, as well as being a coach, we saw how he struggled at Manchester United, didn't last long. I'm just looking at the first team for Klopp's first game, Didi. It was a scoreless draw with Spurs. Simon Mignolet was in goal, Nathaniel Klein and Martin Skrtel, Sacco and Moreno were the back 4. Midfield was Lucas Leiva, Emre Can, James Milner and Adam Lallana, and up front Coutinho and Divock Origi. It's extraordinary, isn't it? When you on the bench was Joe Allen, Jordan Ibe, Kolo Toure, Adam Bogdan, Jerome Sinclair and Conor Randall. So it's hard to overstate the job he did there, isn't it? I mean,
unbelievable.
None of those guys, you know, with all respect to them, I was a journeyman myself, but they really were journeymen.
Yeah, and not too many players. I think Origi stayed for quite some time, and obviously Milner. But he had to change the team in a very short space of time, and that's a quality in itself. That when you go into a club and you change pretty much within 2 years, you change 10 or 12 or 15 players.
Yes.
And I think this is what people don't talk about enough. Yes, he bought good players, but every player who came to Liverpool became a better player. And if you look at other teams, if you look at Manchester United at the moment, you feel that everybody who goes there, the value decreases and he's worth half the money after 2 seasons because they don't perform. And that's the atmosphere he created, a culture within the club where everybody had a chance to express himself, hence they got better players.
What do you think he'll do now? First of all, I'd like to ask you, Didi, about the reason, because you had a long time at the very top of the game as a player. The reason he gave was, he said, I'm burnt out. I'm doing 6 press conferences a week. I don't feel like I can go to the well anymore. I'm tired. That was his reason. Would you say that's genuine reason? And do you think that after a rest, he'll go back and manage again, or coach again, maybe at Bayern Munich, where things aren't going great, I don't think, for Thomas Tuchel.
Yeah, well, 100% genuine. I think every word when he spoke, I think everybody could feel.
Yes,
that the words came from the bottom of his heart, and the relationship he's got with the football club. I don't think it's a decision he would have made lightly. So, he was very honest.
Yes.
And if he doesn't think he's the best man for the job, then he's got to step down, and that's what he does now. I think the timing was good as well, because it gives Liverpool 4 or 5 months to find a successor. He said he doesn't want to do anything for a year, for one season.
Yes.
And obviously the German national team job probably comes up after the Euros, because Nagelsmann is only there till the summer. And I think if you can have Klopp, you've got to put somebody in interim as a caretaker for a year, because then you still have another year till the World Cup, I think, in USA or in Mexico. I think you've got to wait for a year. If he says, or if he gives them a sign, the German FA, that he wants to do it.
Now, Alonso, a successor, as you say, they're big boots to fill, Didi. Alonso has this remarkable record with Bayer Leverkusen, who are not a big club, are they?
No, they used to be, but they haven't been for a long time. And I think that obviously you need a strong personality when you bring a manager in to manage such a huge football club. People talk about De Zerbi, who's doing ever so well at Brighton, but Liverpool is a different kettle of fish. And Postecoglou, I think, is doing a very good job at Tottenham. Yes. Again, Liverpool is a little bit bigger than Tottenham. I think they'll be very careful, but I think, as I said, to succeed Klopp is an almost impossible job.
Right.
But if you ask me now, who's got the best chance to succeed after Klopp, it will probably Xabi Alonso.
Right. And the experience he's had, I mean, the difference between the Bundesliga and the Premier League in terms of resources, money, it's a completely different ballgame, isn't it, Didi? I mean, the German clubs don't have the kind of money the Premier League clubs have to go into the transfer market. I mean, for example, 75 million for Virgil van Dijk would have been out of the question for even Bayern Munich at that time.
Yeah, no, 100%. Then again, what I also always say is that sometimes it's easier when you haven't got that much money, because you just tell the players what you can offer them, and they either take it or leave it. And the problem, I think, as you see at times with Manchester United or Chelsea now, when people know, or when agents know there's a lot of money to be had, I think sometimes you can attract players for the wrong reason.
Yes.
I don't think that's the case in Liverpool. That was one of Klopp's biggest strengths, and also a strength of Alonso, because he brought players in, one from Belgium, Boniface, who's unfortunately injured for them now for a couple of months. But he came in and he's already scored 13 or 14 goals. So the players he's had and the players he brought in, he all made him better players. And this is why Xabi is capable of doing it. It won't be easy to succeed. But I think if he were to go in, obviously you've got more financial resources in England or in Liverpool as he has in Leverkusen.
Yes.
But I'm sure if he were to go in, he'd spend it wisely.
I mean, if he's looking at a future in coaching, management at the highest level, the Real Madrid job, because he did play for Real, didn't he, would be an option.
That's right.
Because, I think they have the best manager in the world, best coach in the world, actually, at the moment. But he'll be going, I would think. I think he signed a contract now for another couple of years. The options aren't great in Germany. They're not great in Europe at the moment. And the money and the attraction for players is in the Premier League. Alonso also has a connection with Ireland. He lived here for a little while in County Meath. But was he happy in Liverpool? Do you think he would have the ambition to do it, taking into account the big shoes he has to fill? If he's the right man, he won't be afraid of that, will he? Because Liverpool seem to be producing really good young players from the academy, Didi, which is a surprise when you think of the successes Klopp has had with the senior team. There is something happening in the academy as well, and lots of good players coming out of it.
Absolutely, and Klopp is not scared to throw them in, and Xabi won't be any different. Xabi was loved by the people in Liverpool and by the fans. So
yeah,
if you ask 100 Liverpool fans what they think about Xabi Alonso, I don't think you find one who says a bad word or doesn't rave about the guy. This is a connection he's also had, and I think he also got it very quickly when he got there, because he learned the language pretty quickly, and he always had a special bond with the fans. So from that point of view, I think he would be a perfect fit. I think if he were to make it public that he might leave or does leave in the summer, there'll be a lot of takers. But as you said, Ancelotti's staying for another season. He's been at Madrid. I don't think Barcelona might appeal to him that much. And then you look at Bayern Munich or other teams in the Premier League. But I think the way he's been loved by the people, and as I said, he's been a very successful, a fantastic player for Liverpool. I think in the Premier League, his first destination would be Liverpool.
Right. And just a final question, Didi. I mean, the situation in Bayern Munich, I saw a piece in one of the English papers at the weekend by a former player, a fellow called Parker, who I seem to remember played for Spurs, not very prominently. He said that every club that Harry Kane goes to suffers because of Harry Kane. And he cited as an example, he said, Tottenham, he ruined them. All he was doing was scoring goals. And he said now he's in the process of ruining Bayern Munich, who won the last 11 Bundesligas and now look like they might be picked this year. So his theory is that Harry goes there. It's all about Harry. He's very selfish. I don't agree with a word of this, but I want to know what you think. That he does really well. He scores loads of goals, but it's at the expense of his teammates. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I can hear what he says, but I don't think the problems of Bayern Munich got much to do with him.
No.
Because, as you said, he's already got 25 or 27 goals in all competitions.
Yes.
The team is not playing well, that's right. I don't think that's down to Kane. But where he might have a point is that, as a team, you have to look at the whole team functions.
Yes.
And 2 years ago, Haaland left for Manchester City, and everybody said, how are we gonna score goals? How are we gonna be successful without him? And on the last day of the season, if they won against Mainz last season, they would have won the league. So in the first year after Haaland left, they had a chance to win the league. So it's not all about the goals. I think it helps if you've got a player who scores 20, 25 goals, or the whole team needs to function. But in this case, has he held Spurs up? I'm not too sure. We need to see how it's going the next couple of years. But I think the problems of Bayern Munich at the moment haven't got anything to do with Kane. Quite the contrary, because he's a breath of fresh air. He's a very humble guy. Around the dressing room, he's loved. The fans love him.
Yeah.
He has a connection with the fans, and now he's been great since he's come here, and he's loved. It's Kane mania still. He's been there 6 months. Well, we still got Kane mania.
Yeah, well, no, I think he's a fantastic pro. I think his all-round game has improved enormously over the years we've seen him. Not just a goal scorer, and he comes deep now. And I saw Bayern Munich earlier this season in the Champions League game, Didi. I think I said to you at the time, I didn't think much of them. I thought they had a lot of very ordinary players, and I think you probably agree with most of that. Just a final question.
Yeah, they haven't clicked.
No, they don't. They didn't actually. The night I watched them, they weren't really having a go, which you don't expect, but from such a big club. Just a final question for our Liverpool supporters who listen to us about Xabi Alonso. Do you think he will take it if it's offered? Do you think he'll want it? Allowing for the fact that they are big boots, and it could be, but there are an awful lot of good players and an awful lot of good young players there right now.
Well, there's stories coming out of Leverkusen. He extended his contract, I think, early in the season, but I'm sure they've got an agreement somehow. If he wants to leave in the summer, he can go for. As a football romantic, I would love to see them another season in Leverkusen. But the problem might be, can they keep the team together? Because they've got some outstanding players. I think one or two will leave, which obviously will harm their chances next season.
Yes.
I think if Liverpool comes calling, I think it's very hard to turn down, even though he follows in Klopp's footsteps, and we don't know where the club is going. But the thing is, sometimes the big clubs, they only come once.
Yes. Yeah. Gotcha.
And if somebody comes in the summer and he does well, that club might not be, or the job might not be on offer for the next 4, 5, 6 years, or maybe 9 years if they find another club. Who knows?
Right.
So I think if Liverpool comes calling, I think he'll take it.
Okay, Didi, for me and for all our listeners, it's a real pleasure to hear you talking. You were right about VAR as well. And you were so right. You were the only one that was saying it would be a disaster. It's been a bloody disaster. And it's refreshing now to see some cup games where they haven't got the second division clubs haven't got it. So you were right about VAR. You're always welcome on this programme. And of course, you'll be with RTE for the European Championship. We're really grateful to you, Didi, for talking to us today. Thank you very much indeed.